right now, I think we need the confrontation, and we need all the pressure we can get, and we need to keep that pressure on so that hopefully, and here's where I think I'm optimistic and Christian, hopefully human nature can be reshaped into more viable forms and more viable shapes.
You know, we've been watching, I feel, the if you want to call him the Negro in the street go through his type of revolution, which is the affirmative, the aggressive, the active revolution. But I think the middle-class Negro has developed to the point where he now is going through what I would consider a mental revolution. He will not participate actively in the streets in terms of the going out and the riots and what have you, but I think these have caused him to do some serious rethinking mentally about the entire process of what's happening, what needs to be done with the Negro in this country, and what role the middle-class Negro is really going to play. And this kind of situation has caused an internal revolution, a mental revolution of the middle-class Negro, which I think is, frankly, it's about time it's happened. It's too important.
A mental revolution. What are its roots? For the first 250 years in America, Negroes were concerned with freeing themselves from physical bonds, though the horrors of American chattel slavery left their scars upon not only the backs, but also the minds of its victims. During slavery, distinctions arose between those who labored in the fields under the overseer's gun and others, often the illegitimate offspring of the slave owner himself, who were favored with servant jobs up at the big house. These house Negroes, as they were called, were sometimes more mentally chained than the field Negroes they were elevated above. From the house Negroes on the plantations and a small artisan and servant group which established itself in the cities, the Negro middle class developed.
Once you have freedom coming in 1865, what you had then is an eruption into the cities of the peasant farming group coming out of the cotton fields, which builds down beneath the emerging middle class, a very large stratum of less sophisticated people with less money and less education, and you now have a mass which really, in many cities, it begins to so outnumber the middle class that it begins to have prejudices itself against these groups of people who act very differently and have different values. Then I think you begin to get something else happening, which has happened with all immigrants who have come to this country, that out of that uneducated, impecunious mass, people begin to get ahead by acquiring some money and education, and their children do also. And so you'd have what might be called the new middle class arising, say, between 1920 and the Second World War. I think this process then got speeded up after the Second World War, partly because of the fact that those who had done Army service had a chance to get a college education or various kinds of technical education through their GI Bill of Rights money, which meant a whole new stratum begins to get an education which hadn't before.
Still, as the outward evidences of physical enslavement were overcome, there often remained the more insidious fact of lingering mental bondage. 20 years ago, Dr. E. Franklin Frazier, Howard University sociologist, critically assessed the Negro middle class and launched upon it a bitter attack which reverberates within the black community to this day.